You know, something funny happens when we get older. We stop chasing things that once seemed important, and we start craving something much deeper. Peace. Real, quiet peace. Not just the kind where the room is silent, but the kind where your heart feels calm, your mind isn't racing, and your spirit feels light. After 60, this kind of peace becomes less of a luxury and more of a necessity. But what if I told you that some of the people stealing your peace aren't strangers, or noisy neighbors, or even the news on TV, they're family? Now, I know that might sound harsh. Family is supposed to be our source of love, right? Of support, connection, shared history. But let's be honest for a second. Just because someone shares your blood doesn't mean they bring you peace. And after 60, when your health, your time, and your emotional energy become more precious than ever, you start to realize something very important. Not every relative deserves a front row seat in your life. So today, we're going to talk about 6 kinds of relatives you may need to distance yourself from, not out of anger or spite, but out of love for yourself. And trust me, number 5 is going to surprise you. Let's start with someone you probably know too well. The drama queen. Oh yes, there's always one in the family, isn't there? She could be your cousin, your sister, or even your adult daughter. Her name might be Lily or Janet or Brenda, but the role is always the same. Every minor issue becomes a disaster. Every conversation turns into a storm. She lives for the chaos, feeds on the drama, and always needs an audience. Maybe when you were younger, you just brushed it off. Maybe you even felt sorry for her. That's just the way she is, you'd say. But now you can feel it. Every outburst she has, every angry phone call, every guilt trip, every scene she creates, it chips away at you. Your nerves get tighter. Your nights get shorter. Your joy feels smaller. Let me tell you something you already know in your gut. Peace is not just nice to have at this stage of life. It's essential. Science backs this up. Chronic stress from toxic relationships can raise your blood pressure, damage your heart, weaken your immune system, and even impact your memory. And all of that for what? So someone else can keep using your life as their stage? You didn't make it to your 60s, 70s, or beyond just to become the referee in someone else's emotional wrestling match. You've earned the right to live peacefully, to breathe deeply, to spend time with people who lift you up, not drag you down. Think of it like this. You wouldn't leave your front door wide open during a storm, would you? Of course not. You lock it tight, you close the windows, you stay inside where it's safe and calm. So why not do the same for your emotional home? Next time the drama queen starts pulling you into her tornado, pause. Don't engage. Don't take the bait. Just step back. Protect your energy like you protect your front door. And don't feel guilty. That's not cold-hearted, it's wise. Not every fire needs your water. Not every cry for attention deserves your response. Now let's move on to someone a little trickier. They don't come with raised voices or tearful outbursts. No, they come with softer words like help or emergency. I'm talking about the money leech. Now, before you start thinking I'm being too hard, hear me out. Most of us, especially those of us who were raised on values of generosity and family loyalty, have helped someone out at some point. And that's a beautiful thing. Helping once or twice out of love is kindness. But when that kindness gets twisted into a habit, when every phone call, every visit, every text starts with, "Hey, I was wondering if you could," that's when the line gets crossed. Let me tell you about a man named Harold. Harold is 72, worked for decades as a train conductor, saved carefully, and looked forward to traveling with his wife in retirement. But Harold has a younger nephew named Marcus, who always seems to be down on his luck. First, it was a business loan that failed. Then car repairs. Then rent. Then just a little help between jobs. Harold, being the soft-hearted man he is, always said yes. And by the time he looked up, the travel dreams were gone. The savings had vanished. And Marcus? He'd moved on to someone else. This isn't just Harold's story. It happens more than we like to admit. The truth is, if someone really respected you, they wouldn't keep draining you. Especially not at this stage of life when every dollar, every bit of financial security matters more than ever. You're not bringing in a steady paycheck anymore. You worked hard for that retirement fund, and you deserve to enjoy it. So ask yourself this: when you keep giving, who's giving back to you? And if something unexpected happened to you tomorrow, would that relative you've been helping be there to help you? History says probably not. Now, let me be clear. I'm not saying you should never help. I'm saying change how you help. Offer advice. Help them find resources. Point them to jobs. But when it comes to cash, draw the line. You have the right to say, "I'm sorry, I can't do that anymore." Without guilt, without apology. You're not being selfish, you're being smart. Because generosity without boundaries leads to resentment, and that's no way to spend your golden years. If this hits close to home for you, if you've ever opened your wallet again and again only to feel emptier each time, not just financially, but emotionally, I want you to pause and say this out loud with me. I choose my financial freedom. Say it again if you need to. Write it down. Because once you do, you begin to take your life back. One no at a time. Now let's talk about someone who might not raise their voice, but somehow always manages to get under your skin. The always right relative. You probably already know who it is. Maybe it's your older brother Raymond, who always thinks he knows best, or your cousin Linda, who turns every conversation into a debate. No matter what you say, they've got a better way. You could tell them you're feeling great, and they'll still find something to correct. You say you're trying a new vitamin. They say it's a waste of money. You mention seeing a new doctor, and they immediately question your decision. These are the kinds of people who treat your life like it's a quiz they've been hired to grade. And here's the thing, it starts small. A little eye roll here. Really there. But over time, it adds up. You start second-guessing your own choices. You start shrinking in conversations. And worst of all, you begin to doubt your own judgment. Let me tell you about Eleanor. She's 69, retired, and recently started painting again. A hobby she hadn't touched since her 20s. She was so proud, so excited to show her family. But when she showed her paintings at a family dinner, her niece Caroline said, "Oh, you're really going to spend your time doing that? Isn't there a senior program with more productive classes?" Eleanor laughed it off, but later that night, her brush just stopped moving. That's the danger of the always right relative. It's not just the words, it's the message underneath. You don't know what's best for you. But here's what I want you to hear today. That is a lie. You've lived decades. You've raised kids, worked jobs, loved, lost, succeeded, stumbled, and stood back up again. You don't need anyone's permission to live the way that feels right to you. Whether that's painting or salsa dancing or volunteering or doing absolutely nothing but enjoying your garden. If it brings you joy, it's worth protecting. Setting boundaries with these kinds of relatives doesn't mean arguing. It doesn't mean you need to change their mind. All it means is drawing a line between what they say and what you believe. So next time they start in with the advice you never asked for, take a breath and say something like, "I appreciate your opinion, but I trust my own decisions." You don't need to convince them. You only need to protect your peace. Remember what Maya Angelou said, "Never make someone a priority when all you are to them is an option." And I'll add, never let someone else's arrogance become your anxiety. Which brings us to the next relative. The one who doesn't argue with you, they just quietly make you feel like you're always in their debt. Yes, I'm talking about the guilt tripper. Now this one is sneaky, because they often hide behind love. Their words sound sweet, but they carry weight. Lines like, "After everything I've done for you," or "I just thought you'd be there for me like I was for you." Sound familiar? At first, you might feel a little bad. You remember how they helped out once, or came through for you years ago. But then you realize this isn't about a single favor. This is a pattern, a cycle. You're constantly being made to feel like you owe them something. Your time, your energy, your presence. And the cost? It's your peace, your independence, your ability to say no without feeling like a terrible person. Let me tell you about Gladys, a retired nurse who spent her life caring for others. At 74, she just wanted to slow down and enjoy her mornings, reading on the porch, sipping coffee, taking long walks with her dog. But her cousin Margaret had other ideas. Margaret called every week with something new. "Can you drive me to my appointment? Can you watch the grandkids just this once? I just don't know what I'd do without you." And when Gladys said no, Margaret would sigh and say, Well, I guess I'll figure something out. Every time, that guilt sank in. Until Gladys wasn't walking her dog anymore, wasn't reading, wasn't resting. She was living someone else's schedule and growing more resentful by the day. Here's the truth no one tells you. Real love doesn't come with IOUs. It doesn't manipulate. It doesn't weigh you down. You are not selfish for needing space. You are not ungrateful for wanting peace. And no, you do not have to explain yourself every time you say no. If someone is using guilt to control you, that's not care, that's control. So how do you stop it? You learn to say no kindly, but firmly. You don't need a long explanation. A simple "I can't do that right now" is enough. And when they push back, you stand your ground. Their disappointment is not your responsibility. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. That applies here too. You can't control whether someone feels upset, but you can control whether you carry that guilt on your back. So the next time someone tries to guilt you into saying yes, pause. Ask yourself, am I doing this out of love or out of fear? If it's fear of upsetting them, of being judged, of not being good enough, then you owe it to yourself to say no. Because your later years are not about making everyone else comfortable. They're about finally, fully living for you. If you're still struggling with this, try saying this aloud. I release guilt. I choose peace. Say it again until it sticks. Because your joy is not a debt to repay. It's your birthright, and it's time you claimed it. Now I want to prepare you, because this next one might surprise you the most. It's not loud. It's not aggressive. In fact, it often comes wrapped in kindness, in the words, "I'm just trying to help." I'm talking about the toxic caretaker. This is the family member who says they're doing things for your own good. They start with errands, picking up your medications, driving you to appointments. At first, it feels like love. You're grateful. It's a relief. But slowly, something starts to shift. Suddenly, they're speaking on your behalf, making choices you didn't ask them to make. "You don't need to worry about that. I've taken care of it," they say. Or, "You shouldn't be making those decisions anymore. Let me handle it." It sounds caring on the surface, but underneath, it's something else. Control. Let me tell you about Mr. Stanley. He's 77, a retired builder who spent his whole life making decisions, solving problems, and living with quiet dignity. After his wife passed, his well-meaning niece Julie moved in to help. At first, it was small stuff. She cooked, sorted his mail, and organized his medications. But soon she was canceling his plans, choosing his doctors, even throwing out food she didn't approve of. When he pushed back, she'd say, "Uncle Stan, I'm doing this because I love you. You shouldn't be stressing about these things." Eventually, he stopped fighting, stopped choosing, stopped living on his own terms. And that's what made him truly unhappy. Not aging, not his health, but the slow erosion of his independence. It's one of the most heartbreaking things about growing older, not losing physical strength, but losing the power to direct your own life. And often, it doesn't come from bad people. It comes from people who think they're helping. That's why the toxic caretaker is so dangerous. They don't realize they're crossing a line. But you feel it. You feel smaller, less capable, like you're fading into the background of your own life. But here's the truth. Accepting help doesn't mean surrendering control. There's a difference between support and takeover. And you deserve support that respects your dignity. So how do you spot the signs? Ask yourself, do they often speak for you instead of with you? Do they make you feel incapable, subtly or directly? Do they dismiss your choices, even when you're clear about what you want? If the answer is yes, it's time to set boundaries. You can accept help and still be in charge. You can say, "Thank you for your help, but I need to make that decision myself." Or, "I appreciate what you do, but please don't speak for me." If they truly care, they'll respect that. And if they don't, that tells you everything you need to know. Let me tell you how Mr. Stanley took his life back. One day, he quietly hired a part-time professional caregiver, a woman named Rosa, who asked for his preferences, included him in every decision, and never assumed. Then he sat Julie down and said, "You've helped me a lot, and I'm grateful, but I need to feel like I'm still in charge of my life." And just like that, something shifted. He began choosing again, living again, smiling again. Because real help lifts you, it doesn't replace you. Now let's talk about one final type of relative. And this one doesn't come with drama or guilt or control. No, they come dressed in perfection. You know the one I'm talking about, the perfect image relative. At every family gathering, they float in like a magazine cover. Their clothes are flawless. Their kids are honor students. Their home looks like a showroom. Their social media is filled with tropical vacations, organic meals, and perfect lighting. And every conversation somehow turns into a highlight reel. You say you're enjoying gardening. They're starting a vineyard. You mention you've taken up walking. They've just finished a half marathon. You share that you finally bought a new chair. They just redesigned their entire house. Now don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with success. But this relative doesn't just share their life, they perform it. And if you're not careful, you start to feel like yours just doesn't measure up. Let me tell you about Lillian. She's 71, a former teacher, kind, modest, and proud of the life she's built. But every time her niece Brooke visits, Lillian feels smaller. Brooke always arrives with something new, a luxury purse, a new car, a story about her brilliant kids, or her weekend yoga retreat. And though Brooke never says it outright, there's always an unspoken question hanging in the air. Aunt Lillian, is that all you've done? And the truth is, Lillian had done plenty. She raised 2 kids on a tight budget, taught generations of students, cared for her aging parents, helped neighbors, built a warm, loving life. But in the presence of perfection, even a good life can start to feel like not enough. And that's the danger. Because perfection isn't real. It's curated, edited, filtered. It's the best 5% of someone's life, dressed up as 100%. And the pressure to compare yourself to that illusion, it's poisonous. Your later years should not be spent feeling less than. They should be about peace, contentment, and gratitude for the life you've lived, not feeling like you have to chase someone else's version of success. Denzel Washington once said, "Don't aspire to make a living. Aspire to make a difference." And you, my friend, have already made a difference. So the next time that perfect relative tries to sparkle a little too bright, remind yourself, you don't need their life. You need your peace. Stop comparing. Start celebrating. Celebrate the quiet strength it took to survive tough years. The love you've given. The wisdom you've earned. The legacy you're leaving. Because your worth is not measured by vacations or bank accounts or Instagram likes. It's measured by the people you've touched, the challenges you've overcome, and the joy you still choose every day. So ask yourself right now, are you living to impress others? Or are you living to enjoy your journey? Because this journey, it's yours, and you've earned every single step. So now that we've talked about the 6 kinds of relatives who can quietly drain your joy after 60, the drama starters, the money takers, the guilt trippers, the control freaks disguised as helpers, the constant critics, and the perfect image performers, the big question is this: how do you protect your peace without becoming bitter or shutting out your entire family? It all starts with one simple but powerful thing: boundaries. Now, a lot of us grew up thinking that setting boundaries was rude, that it meant pushing people away or being difficult. But here's what we weren't taught. Boundaries aren't walls. They're doors. You decide who gets to come in, how far they get to go, and when it's time to close things off. At this stage in life, your time, your energy, your attention, these are limited and deeply valuable. And not everyone should get unlimited access to them, especially if they're not adding anything good to your life. Setting a boundary can be as simple as saying, "I love you, but I can't talk about this right now." Or, "I'm not available on weekends anymore." Or, "That topic always upsets me, so let's change the subject." It doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to come with an argument. And most importantly, you don't need permission to protect your peace. Because if you don't set the boundary, someone else will, and it will always benefit them, not you. Warren Buffett once said, "The difference between successful people and really successful people is that really successful people say no to almost everything." That includes emotional vampires, guilt trips, and the cousin who only calls when they need something. And when you do say no, say it without guilt, without backpedaling, without the nervous laugh or 10-minute explanation. You are not being difficult. You are not being selfish. You are being wise. Now, let's take it one step further. It's not just about saying no to others. It's about finally saying yes to yourself. And that brings us to the second big step, prioritizing your own well-being. I want to tell you about someone named Dorothy. She's 73 and spent most of her life doing things for others. Raising 3 kids, caring for her in-laws, volunteering at church, cooking for every family event. She was everyone's go-to person. But when she finally retired, she had a dream. Peaceful mornings, travel, reading again. But guess what? The calls didn't stop. Mom, can you watch the baby? Aunt Dot, can you pick up groceries for Uncle Sam? Can you come over just for a little while? And Dorothy said yes. Again and again. Until one day she realized she was retired, but more exhausted than ever. That's when she made a change. She started waking up an hour earlier, just for herself. Quiet tea on the porch. A book she loved. She stopped answering calls during her me time. She said no without apology. And slowly, something amazing happened. The world didn't fall apart. People adjusted. They respected her space. And she finally felt like her time was hers again. Your golden years are not just about rest. They're about reclaiming the life you spent decades building. And that's not selfish, it's necessary. Because if you don't take care of your body, who will? If you don't protect your mental peace, who will? If you don't claim your joy, who will hand it to you? Self-care, especially after 60, is not optional. It's survival. It's how you stay strong enough to keep showing up on your own terms. So if you've been pushing your needs aside to keep the peace or to keep people happy, ask yourself, at what cost? And then take one small action today that says, I matter too. Finally, we arrive at the last and often hardest lesson, learning to let go. Letting go doesn't mean cutting people off. It doesn't mean being angry forever. It means choosing your own peace over someone else's chaos. Choosing clarity over confusion. Choosing your future over a pattern that's been draining you for years. Let me ask you something real. How many times have you stayed in relationships, whether with family or friends, that made you feel small, tired, or invisible just because you didn't want to hurt their feelings? And in the process, who got hurt? You. Letting go is about setting yourself free from expectations that no longer serve you. Free from old guilt. Free from unspoken rules that say you always have to be available, agreeable, or forgiving no matter what. And I know it's hard, especially when it's family, especially when the ties go back decades. But sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for everyone involved is to stop playing a role that doesn't fit you anymore. Letting go might mean fewer phone calls. It might mean shorter visits. It might mean finally telling someone, I can't do this with you anymore. Not out of cruelty, but out of care for your own heart. And if you feel scared doing that, just remember this. Resentment is like drinking poison and hoping the other person gets sick. You're not hurting them by holding on to guilt or frustration. You're only hurting yourself. So what are you still carrying? Which relationships leave you tired instead of uplifted? Who in your life only shows up when they need something and disappears when you do? And most importantly, are you ready to let go? Because once you do, once you protect your boundaries, prioritize your joy, and let go of what's been weighing you down, you will feel something incredible. Lightness, freedom, peace. The kind of peace that allows you to sleep better, laugh louder, breathe deeper. That's what these years are for. Not just surviving, but truly living. So I'll ask you again, are you living for other people's comfort, or are you finally living for your own joy? If this message spoke to you today, I want you to write in the comments, I choose peace. Let the world know you're ready to live your truth unapologetically. And if you've ever dealt with any of these 6 types of relatives, share your story. Someone out there might need to hear it. Until next time, take care of your heart, your time, and your peace. Because you've earned it. And don't forget, the power to protect your joy was never in their hands. It's always been in yours. You hold the power within.